This is an instructional video on how to graph the equation of a line. So there are several things that we need to remember when we're graphing the equation of the line. The first thing is that the equation has to be in y equals mx plus b form. It's also called slope-intercept form. The second step is to identify the slope, and so that's going to be m equals, and the y-intercept, which is going to be the b equals. You graph the b value first on the y-axis. That's the line that runs straight up and down. Then you use the slope, that's the m value, to go up or down, and then always right. So again, we need the equation to be in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. And this equation is, the y equals is at the beginning, the m and the x, the -3 and the x are side by side, and then plus b at the end. So we can go ahead and identify our m equals, which is -3. The m and the x are always side by side. So the m is here with the -3x. And then the plus b, even though it's minus, that's okay. It just means we have a -3 as our value. So when we graph it, we graph the b value first on the y-axis. So I'm going to go down to -3 and put a point. Then we have our m value. The m is -3, so that tells me that I'm going to go down and then right, always to the right-hand side. So I'm going to go down 3, 1, 2, 3. It goes off the graph a little bit. That's okay. And then over to the right 1. I go over 1 because slope is always a fraction. And so this is a -3 over 1. Even though the 1 is not written, it is an understood and imaginary 1. Then we're going to go the opposite direction because we need our points to go all the way across the graph. I'm going to go up 3 and over 1. Up 3 and over 1. Up 3, it goes off the graph, that's okay, and over 1. You can connect your dots, and you have a line that runs across your graph. Again, we need the equation to be in y equals mx plus b form. This equation is, the y equals is in the beginning, the m and the x, 1/2 x are side by side, and we have the plus b at the end. My m value is 1/2. My b value is a +3. When it comes to graphing the equation, we graph the b value first on the y-axis. The y-axis is the one that runs up and down, so we graph a +3. My m value is a +1/2, so that tells me to go up 1 and right 2. That's how our fraction works. Up 1 and then right 2 is going to put my point here. Up 1 and right 2 is going to put my point here. Once you get to the edge, we're going to go the opposite direction so we can make our line go all the way across. Down 1 and over 2. Down 1 and over 2. Down 1 and over 2. It's okay if it goes off the graph a little bit. We can connect our dots and draw our line. While having these extra lines here to show you going up and down helps, those cannot be in your final answer as they are not part of the line. So make sure you erase them after you've finished. For this equation, we have y equals negative 5 over 2x minus 1. It is in the y equals mx plus b form. We have negative 5 over 2x together, and we have the minus 1, which is our plus b. Our m value, take the negative, negative 5 over 2, and the b value, negative 1. We start by graphing the b value, negative 1, on the y-axis, the line that runs up and down. My m value is negative 5 over 2, so that tells me I'm going to go down 5, and then always to the right 2. So starting at my negative 1, I go down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It goes off the graph, that's okay. And then right 2, 1, 2. Puts it about right here. Then we're going to go the opposite direction. I'm going to go up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then over 2. And I can connect my dots, and I have a straight line going across the graph. Remember, if you chose to show your lines as you counted up and right, make sure you erase those in your final answer. For this equation, we have y equals negative x plus 2. It is in the equation y equals mx plus b. We have the m and the x together side by side, and then the plus b at the end. Our m value, the number in front of the x, we know it's negative, and if there's no number written, it is an understood 1. So our m value is a negative 1, and our b value is a positive 2. So when it comes to graphing, we graph the b value first on the y-axis, the line that runs up and down. We graph positive 2. Our m value is a negative 1, so negative means down. We're going to go down 1, and then we're going to go right 1. Remember, slope is always a fraction. So in math, if nothing is written, in this case, nothing's written in the denominator, it's an understood 1. Just like there was no number next to the x, it's an understood 1. So starting at my 2 value, I'm going to go down 1 and right 1. Put a point. Down 1, right 1. Put a point. Down 1, right 1. And we follow this pattern all the way to the edge. Down 1 and right 1. Once you get to the edge, you can go the opposite direction. Up 1 and over 1, following that pattern. So we have a straight line all the way across the graph. If you chose to show your counting steps going down and right, make sure you erase those for your final answer. For this equation, we have y equals negative 2x plus 2. It is in the equation y equals mx plus b. The m and the x are side by side. The plus b is here at the end. Our m value, the m and the x, is negative 2. The b value is a plus 2. It's positive. We start by graphing the b value first on the y-axis, the line that runs up and down. So it's going to be a positive 2. The m value is a negative 2. Negative tells us down. And remember, we always go to the right. Now this is not a fraction, so we have to write the fraction. In math, when nothing is written, it is an understood 1. So starting at our positive 2, we go down 2 and over 1. Down 2 and over 1. Down 2 and over 1. All the way to the edge. Once you get to the edge, you go the opposite direction, up 2 and over 1. You can connect your dots, and you should have a straight line all the way across the graph. Remember, if you showed your counting steps 2 and 1, make sure you go back and erase those in your final answer. Looking at this equation, we need the equation to be in the y equals mx plus b form. This equation is not. This y value is not by itself. It needs to be y equals and then the rest of the problem. And in this section, the rest of the problem is on the wrong side. So what we're going to do, we are going to rewrite the problem. We are going to draw our line straight down the equal sign. To get the y completely by itself, we need to get this 2x, the mx, and we need to move it to the other side because the mx goes on the right-hand side of the equal sign. It's currently on the left. When we move something to the opposite side, we do the opposite operation. So instead of negative 2x, we do the opposite. We do a plus 2x. That's how we go from one side to the other. I haven't touched that 3y yet. It's still there. So I have a positive 2x and I have a positive 9. Now, this 3 and the y side by side means multiply. So again, we're going to do the opposite. We want the 3 to be on the right-hand side because in our equation, the y is all by itself. So instead of multiplying, we do the opposite. We divide. That means that the y is by itself because that 3 has been moved over. 2 divided by 3 gives us a big long decimal. But remember, slope is always a fraction. So if you turn that decimal into the fraction, you get the fraction 2/3, and then your x value. And we also divide by 9. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Now our equation is in y equals mx plus b form. We have the m and the x side by side. We have the plus 3, and the y equals all by itself. Now we can identify our m equals for our mx is 2/3, and our b value is a positive 3. To graph it, we start by graphing the b value positive 3 on the y-axis, the line that goes up and down. Our m value is positive, so that tells us to go up. And remember, we always go to the right. So we go up 2 and right 3. Once you reach the edge, we're going to go the opposite direction. We go down 2 and over 3. It goes off the graph a little bit. That's okay. We can connect our dots, and we have a line going all the way across the graph. Make sure that you go back and erase your counting steps in your final answer. For this equation, x plus 3y equals 3, again, we need the equation to be in y equals mx plus b form, slope-intercept form. When we look at our equation, we need the y to be all by itself on the left-hand side. We need the mx plus b to be all by itself on the right-hand side. Looking here, we can see that this x is not on the right-hand side, so we need to move it. When we move something, we have to do the opposite. So instead of x, we do the opposite. We do a minus x. We have moved it to the other side. I'm going to bring this 3y down. We're not moving that just yet. We got to do it one step at a time. I have a negative x and I have a positive 3. Now, the 3 and the y together mean multiply. To move the 3 to the opposite side, we have to do the opposite operation. So instead of multiply, we do the opposite. We divide. We've now taken the 3, moved it to the right-hand side, so all we're left with is y equals. Now remember, this number in front of the x, a negative 1, it is a negative 1 because in math, if nothing is written, it's an understood 1. So negative 1 divided by 3 gives you a big long decimal, 0.3 repeating. Slope cannot be a decimal. Slope has to be a fraction. And so when you change that decimal into the fraction, we get negative 1/3 x. Then we can go ahead and divide the other number. Positive 3 divided by 3 is going to give us a positive 1. Now the equation is in y equals mx plus b form. The m and the x are side by side in the front, and the plus b is at the end. Our m value is a negative 1/3, and our b value is a positive 1. We start by graphing the b value, the positive 1, on the y-axis, the line that runs straight up and down. And then we're going to go ahead and graph our m value, our slope. Our slope is negative. That tells us to go down, and then always to the right-hand side. So we're going to go down 1 and then right 3. It goes off the graph a little bit. That's okay. Once we get to the edge, we're going to go the opposite direction, up 1 and over 3 following our pattern so we can get a straight line. Again, goes off the graph a little bit. That's okay. Once you finish, you can connect your dots and you have a line that runs all the way across your graph. Make sure you go back and erase your counting lines in your final answer. And then you're finished. For this equation, we have y equals 2. And just as always, we need it to be in the y equals mx plus b form. Even though it may not look like it, this equation is in y equals mx plus b form. The y equals is on the left-hand side. Everything else is on the right-hand side. What's missing, why it looks different, is that there's no mx value. There's no x variable, so that means there's no m. If that happens, if there is no m and x side by side, that means that the m is 0. It's missing, it's not there. The b value is the number that's left over, that positive 2. So when we graph it, we graph the b value, positive 2, on the y-axis. And then we graph our slope, our m value. Typically, we want to go up or down. If we have 0, we cannot go up or down, meaning we can only go to the right-hand side. I go up 0, I go down 0, I can only go to the right-hand side. And then we go the opposite direction so it touches both edges. Anytime you have a slope of 0, you're going to have a line that goes straight across. We cannot go up or down, so it can only go straight across. For this problem, again, we always need the equation to be in y equals mx plus b form. Again, even though it might not look like it, this equation is in the correct format because the y is all by itself on the left-hand side and everything else is on the right-hand side. The m and the x are side by side together, so our m is negative 2. The b value at the end, the plus b, there's nothing written there, so that is a plus 0. Our b value is 0. When it comes to graphing the equation, we graph the value at 0. 0 is here in the center on the y-axis. Then we can graph our slope. It's a negative 2, which tells us to go down, and then we always go to the right. In this case, we need to fill in our fraction. It's a negative 2 over 1. Negative 2, so down 2 and right 1. Down 2, right 1. Down 2, right 1. Goes off the graph a little bit. That's okay. Up 2 and over 1. We go the opposite direction after we have finished filling in all the way to one edge. We want to make our line reach all the way across to both edges of the graph. We can connect our dots and we have a straight line going all the way across the graph. We go back through and erase our counting lines that we used to set up our points. You cannot have those lines in your final answer. For this equation, we have x equals 4. This is not in the form y equals mx plus b, nor can it be. There is no y value, so there can be no y equals. For this problem, the slope m is undefined. It is undefined. This is graphed completely different than any other problem that we've done so far. With an undefined slope, we cannot graph an actual number. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this 4 value and we're going to go on the x-axis. The x-axis goes side to side, so I'm going to go to 4 on the x-axis. It's an x equals equation. We graph it on the x-axis. An undefined slope is going to go straight up and down. Undefined goes straight up and down.